Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Roast. It's Sunday the 22nd of September. I'm Phil Carroll.
And I'm Kevin Hornsby.
Well, there we are, right in the Indian summer. We predicted it last week. What a cracking week of weather here in the UK. Roof down, country drives and some amazing lunches out. It's a hard life, Kev, isn't it?
Hard life. Somebody's got to do it. Now, if you don't do it, who's going to do it?
He says from the Mediterranean.
Well, the weather's been unsettled here.
Is it?
Yeah, we've only had highs of 28 and stuff. And I can't believe it. There's these white things in the sky that I haven't seen for about 3 months. And some of them were even dark. So, yeah, but it's actually nice. Seas cool down a little bit. Those cool down a little bit. So it's really refreshing. So, yeah, cracking.
Very good. Very good.
Glad to see that you had some sunshine in the UK.
It's been a better week, but I think that's it now. I was looking at the forecast for the coming week, and it looks like it's dropping into the sort of low, mid-teens and that, which is probably about all right for this time of year. But so let's have a look at some of the news stories that have dominated the headlines this week. There's been Keir Starmer's been in the news again. Obviously, no surprises there. That it's been revealed that he received over £100,000 of free gifts, more than any other party leader in recent times. So it's all very well him telling others to tighten their belts when he doesn't even have to pay for his, I guess, is the first thing. But did you see that?
Maybe he got a gold and diamond studded belt, maybe.
Did you see that he was going on about he's an Arsenal fan, isn't he? And he's got a box at Arsenal that I don't know, presumably he gets paid for or is given, because he said, "Oh well, I did have a season ticket, but I can't go now into the normal stands because obviously it's a security issue." So that was one. But yeah, there's been a bit of an uproar in terms of the amount of money he's receiving. And then there was always, I think his advisor basically is paid something like £170,000. And they're saying, why should she receive more wage? Is it right that she's paid more than the Prime Minister? So that one was in the headlines this week. But what do you make of it?
Ask yourself, right? Look around the business community.
Yeah.
Who earns £167,000 a year, okay, and has that much responsibility as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
Yeah.
I think it's ludicrous, personally.
You mean that the wages are not in line with what you'd expect someone who's running the country would be on a? I mean,
they're not in line with anything. So the fact that he gets £100,000 with the gifts, why would you expect any different?
And free accommodation and housing and other benefits.
Yeah, but still, in the grand scheme of things, there are probably more than 100 to 200 to 300 AIM listed companies that are getting paid more than our Prime Minister.
Yeah, I think they did an analysis of like European members of Parliament, and the likes of Maloney in Italy was earning something like €500,000 to €750,000. So they were saying that the UK wages for MPs are much, much lower than the rest of Europe. So it was a very interesting comparison.
I think you want them to have enough money, especially the Prime Minister. You want them to have enough money that, they're very comfortable and so money is not a consideration for them.
Do you think that there's more money to be made from being when you retire, the likes of these after dinner speaks where they can make up to £2-3 million by becoming either an ambassador? I mean, look at Nick Clegg. He's something like the chief business officer for Facebook or Meta or something along, and he's earning multi-million pounds. Cameron has made millions on after dinner speeches and being ambassadors for companies. So do you think there's more money to be made on the sort of riding off the back of it?
I think so, but that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
No.
But there you go. I mean, I'm not suddenly saying we pay our Prime Minister £1 million a year or whatever, but,
no.
In the grand scheme of things now with inflation and tax and everything else, I'd be interested to see what his net pay actually is, because it's probably, £7,000-8,000 a month. Well, living in London, okay, free accommodation. It's not exactly, extravagant lifestyle money, is it?
Yeah. And then the other one was we saw the disgraced Hugh Edwards receiving a 6-month sentence, obviously suspended, just like his decision to pay back his £200,000 of his salary to the BBC, I guess. I mean, it'd be interesting to see whether they chase him up on that one.
I think the less said, the better. There was a few commentaries on it. You sent me a thing on Facebook, I think, and a few other platforms. Yeah, seems like a little bit of one room for one and other room for others, doesn't it, really? But anyway, such is life.
Who announced bankruptcy this week? One of the longest running companies in the UK, certainly a 70s brand. You know, there was a lot of parties associated with them. I don't know if you saw this news, but basically Tupperware announced that it filed for bankruptcy. The bad news had been coming for, quite a long time, but they couldn't keep a lid on it any longer. Okay. So moving swiftly on from that one, I don't know that this was something out of a movie. I genuinely thought it was something out of like a Hollywood drama or thriller, like 24 sort of Jack Bauer stuff. But 32 people, including children, were killed and thousands injured following explosions of communication devices used by Hezbollah across Lebanon on Tuesday and Wednesday. The blasts involving pagers and walkie-talkies occurred during a funeral procession, causing chaos. Hezbollah, which uses pagers to evade Israeli surveillance, blamed Israel for the attack, though Israeli officials have not commented. Reports suggest the explosions were part of a disrupted offensive plan. Hezbollah has relied on pagers to avoid the phone tracking, following a directive from its leader to discard mobile phones after they were compromised by Israeli intelligence. Among the victims were relatives of Hezbollah MPs, and Iran's ambassador to Lebanon was likely injured. Concerns are mounting over whether this will escalate the ongoing conflict between Hezbollah and Israel. What did you make of that, Kev? I mean, I sent you the link to it, and I think you were like, this is just bizarre.
Yeah, it's bizarre. They obviously got the pages before they were delivered to the Hezbollah people and put small explosives in them all. Yeah, I mean, Israel unfortunately now has made the Hezbollah look like idiots. But I saw a quote this week, and you need to take this into consideration. Now, one of the reasons why Hezbollah is where it is because Iran does not want Israel to attack Iran.
Yeah,
but
he said we have
if
to
it
remember
attacks
that
Hezbollah,
Hezbollah exists. Hezbollah exists in order to deter Israel from attacking Iran. Iran does not exist to prevent Israel from attacking Hezbollah. And I think that sums it up, really.
Yeah, that's what I read. That was the quote. I mean, I didn't say it quite as eloquently. Yes, it's a horrible situation, quite horrible that people have been injured and killed and all the rest of it. But to say that the Iranian ambassador to Iran obviously had one of these pages, what does it tell you? He's a member of Hezbollah. He's a member of the terrorist organization and needs to know what's going on. So if you don't now think that, this is state-sponsored attacks on Israel, then, think again.
It's pure terrorism. I mean, the fact that they managed to simultaneously detonate over 9,000 pages on the first day, and the message came in, and it was 15 seconds after the message, so people were literally looking at the devices. I mean, how many eye injuries? How many people were blinded by this? I mean, it's terrible, really.
Yeah.
If any other country had done this, it would have been branded pure terrorism.
No, you're right. You're right. No, there's been reports about the eye surgeons in Lebanon have been working 24/7 because there's so many people have basically just lost eyes, and had real facial problems.
Yeah, I mean, Mossad.
There was one guy that you saw the video, had the bag, didn't he? He had a bag and it was right next to his, what, and it exploded. So I don't know what injuries he had, but it was probably very good. Yeah, no, it's horrendous. Will Iran, Hezbollah, attack again? Yes. Did Israel attack after the event? Yes, Israel. The Hezbollah leader spoke yesterday after the events, and they had to do it on TV, whereas they normally meet in Lebanon because they knew that the Israelis would be watching and the Israelis probably would have bombed the crap out of them. But while he was making his address, the Israelis took out X number of targets of Hezbollah in Lebanon at the very same time he was talking.
Yeah, I mean, Netanyahu, I know he's a man fighting for power in terms of his popularity, but genuinely, does he realise how much he's pulling everybody in? The likes of the US going to get involved if Iran get involved. What are the wider implications for the Middle East? It just seems like he's hell-bent on destabilising further and further. Tensions in the Middle East must be at the worst they've ever been, or not ever been, but certainly one of the highest in our living memory.
Yeah, not the Middle East as a whole, I have to say, no. This is definitely Israel-Iran conflict, in my view. The other countries are not happy about what's happened in Gaza.
He's bringing Syria in now. There was an attack in Damascus. You know what I mean? It spills out. So then you've got Iran. Then you've got Saudi getting involved. Then it just worries me that this is going to escalate immensely.
No, and Israel aren't backing down. So
no. Okay, well, I think we've done.
And
that
at the
one.
same time, have the US actually got a president at the minute?
No,
it would seem not. We don't hear a single thing from Joe Biden, and Kamala is prancing around trying to win the next election. So, do they have a leadership at the minute? Doesn't look like it. Anyway, let's not get too political, even though we are.
We've talked enough on the news, so let's move on to our first guest this week. We're joined by Geoff Baker, Director, Connon, CEO, and Marcelo Bravo, Chief Business Officer at BSF Enterprise. Welcome, gents.
Fine. Thank you. Good. Well,
Absolutely.
Good morning.
How is everybody?
Très bien.
Très bien. Very good. Very good. I mean, it's been over a year since we last had you on, obviously, Geoff and Shay, and first time for you, Marcelo. So obviously, thanks for appearing. Just talk us through how the company has navigated the last year in what feels like it's been a very tough market. Obviously, we've seen the inception of Kerato, the corneal tissue replacement company, and various EU grants. So just talk us through things, please, Geoff.
Yeah, and thanks for having us this lovely Sunday. Hopefully it's sun shining on everybody. The company's, I suppose, fine-tuned its approach with focus on being a tissue engineering company that's providing a platform across a number of sectors and talking to biofarmers as well as cultivated meat companies. But we've all seen in the last year the cultivated meat company industry has been moving forward, but a lot slower than we'd all hoped. City Mix, we're looking to move into China and assist with our joint venture with Ivy Farm, where we're putting together a plant quickly. We're hoping to then also potentially use the City Mix as their media, which should be a great boost to getting media out the door. So cultivated meat is one aspect of the business, and we've wrap that into 3D Biotissue, which was the original company that formed part of BSF, the group. And that's focused on media and cultivated meat, where we're also doing a joint venture with Cell Revs in cultivated meat technologies company, which more will come out over the coming weeks as to how we're progressing with that and the strategy we're developing. In the second of that company is Kerato, a new entity where we've got our IP relating to the cornea, and we're developing the cornea applications of the platform, as I said, the tissue engineering platform. And that allows the development in a bioscience space, which is a totally different industry to cultivated meat. But we've also now joined up with the team out of Montreal University with liquid cornea, which is, I'll let Shay and Marcelo maybe describe more the technical side of things. And the third leg of the business is the leather, our lab-grown leather. And that's been a bit of a focus over the last 6 months as we're pushing to get some commercial arrangements in place with potential customers. And we're talking to quite a few leather companies in Europe and in France. And that's one of the reasons why the guys are over in Paris at the moment and had some successful meetings through the day. So, yeah, it's still an exciting time. The business is going great. I just wish the share price would reflect it.
So yeah, we've had a year of, I don't really even know what word to use, but the venture capitalists have basically pulled the plug on the huge meat. I don't want to use the word artificial, but lab-grown meat or whatever it happens to be. So a lot of the big players have fallen away. So is that going to leave you in a better position or a worse position?
Well, as I was saying, we've got three aspects to our business now, and lab-grown leather, and one of the reasons why we've moved into the lab-grown leather a lot more aggressively is to focus on that industry, which is a totally different industry to food and beverage and cultivated meat. Cultivated meat has slowed, and that's reflected in the lack of revenue that we've been able to generate for sales of City Mix. But, we're still talking to cultivated meat companies, and there are quite successful ones out there that have got some VC money. But you're right, the VC money has dried up dramatically in those privately funded cultivated meat companies around the world.
Yeah, and it's not just cultivated meat. I mean, early stage funding is very difficult. It's been a difficult environment across the piece. And obviously we are in cultivated meat, and that's where we felt it. Cultivated meat will happen at some stage, but no one knows when and where. we're navigating that and we are positioning ourselves, but we're also refocusing perhaps efforts to where we see the lower hanging fruit, and in this case is leather for very similar technology.
So do we see, and welcome Marcelo, do we see the city mix being useful in many applications across biotech situations? Obviously the meat was one of them. We're now talking about the skin. What else could this be used in?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Kevin. It's got multiple applications. It's in cell culture and cells, growth of cells, and the use of cells carries across multiple industries, in particular in the biopharma space. So what we're in the process of doing is developing a new product based on same IP and macromolecular crowders, which are the group name for the type of chemicals used in city mix, rolling out a product called CytoBoost, which is aimed squarely at the R&D and biopharma sector. Has a different price point. It's quite nice in terms of the price point's a lot higher, the volumes required a lot smaller. So those are nice things to have. What we've also done, going back to the city mix, is we are now working, proposing to sell it as an OEM. So we don't have, it minimizes but it almost removes completely any of the production costs. And so who we're working with at the moment, and recently a leading lab-grown meat company has been doing tests, getting great results, and is moving on to the pricing and have kind of set out the kind of minimum orders they will require over the next 5 years, and they're very large numbers, and we're in a great position because we can certainly supply the city mix to meet their demands, and as an OEM product, so we win in both cases. The volume's there, but we don't have to do any of the manufacturing.
Very good. So, I mean, you guys are the technical guys, especially Shay. Do you see that from a financial perspective that lab-grown meat is just not going to work right now because of the finances, or is it partly a technological issue? I mean, basically,
generally, you mean lab-grown meat?
Yeah. Last year, obviously,
there are all kinds of headwinds, so cost is an issue that needs to be addressed, and it's been addressed, but it's about scale. But there's also political and regulatory and cultural barriers to the mass adoption of cultivated meat. It depends on where you are, right? If you're in the state of Florida, the governor has legalized against it, right? So if you're in Singapore, they're trying to get cultivated meat as fast as possible because they have a mandate to supply their own food, by 2030 and whatnot. So there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of hills to climb to get out there with cultivated meat.
But I think the headwinds are decreasing. We just had yesterday the UK FSA, Food Standards Agencies, agreed to put forward a much simpler process for people to gain approval in cultivated meat, which is a massive step forward for the UK, and has been received very, very positively by both investors and the companies in that space. So, yeah, there's been a financial kind of resetting somewhat, but that didn't impact us massively in terms of the financials. But what it did in terms of predicted amounts of city mix, it was less. But even, as I said, even as we're moving closer to the first contract supply of it, the amounts that they're going to need are huge, and you're looking at kind of multi-million pound annual gross profits just from that one company.
Yeah, so it won't take a lot for it to make it worthwhile, is basically what you're saying. You guys are in Paris, so I'm going to just ask straight, who have you been talking to?
We're going to tell you, but I can tell you it's one of the largest fashion houses in the world.
Okay. So one of the largest fashion houses in the world, this is really a hot topic, that they want cruelty-free leather. It seems to be that, a lot of wealthy people that are willing to literally pay thousands, whether it be pounds, dollars, euros, whatever, for their apparel, want it cruelty-free. So is this a line that we can see that all of these fashion houses going down?
They're definitely... We're talking to more than one. They're definitely interested, and they need to be positioned for the consumer trends. And it may be around cruelty-free, it may be around veganism, it may be around carbon emissions and whatever driving the consumer demand, and the houses need to be ready. They're not carrying the flag themselves. They want to make sure they have the materials that are still luxury materials, and there's nothing more luxury than real leather. But they want to make sure they have the material to respond to the market if the market wants it in a certain way.
So you guys are growing real leather. I mean, I've seen some pictures, and maybe we can put some pictures online.
We've got the
interview goes out.
Here's a piece here that you can see. So it has the look and smell of leather and the feel of leather, which is not surprising because it is leather.
It is leather.
It is leather. No, just to clarify, it's not a leather alternative. It's not an alternative leather material. There are many alternative leathers, things made from banana peels or from whatever.
Yes.
Laid down on a plastic film and whatnot. This is leather, and this is what makes it very, very attractive. Also, in technical jargon, we say our point of difference is that we're scaffold free, which means we don't have to add an additive, a scaffold for the cells to grow on and create the three-dimensional structure. We do it without adding anything else. So it's actually skin and therefore leather after you tan it.
Yeah. So what applications for this skin development could be there? Obviously, there's the skin that then is produced, tanned, maybe goes through processes that become, expensive leather bags. And what else? Is there a medical application that this skin could be used for skin grafts, for whatever?
Yeah, well, your skin is your meat, right? And your skin is your corneas. Cornea is a skin, by the way. And so that's this tissue engineering platform. It has multiple applications. But if you think of regenerative medicine, you're talking about a whole clinical program and whatnot. It's a certain very specific market and route to market. The beauty about leather is that, from my point of view, is the one application that has least complexity to it. From where we are now to where we need to be to supply this industrially, it's an engineering project. It's no longer a biology project or a project with clinical risk or whatever. It's an engineering project just to set up the automated process to make this material at scale to supply the market.
And what type of skin are we making then? Are we, is it, you see in these fashion houses, they have crocodile skin, they have snake skin, they have obviously cow skin, they have calf skin because it's much softer. Is it that the technology, or you have the technology now to produce the different types of skin? And what is the one that you're producing at the minute? I've seen pictures of sort of it's skin, but jelly-like substance, obviously, but quite thick as well. So
it doesn't really matter. We could actually use your skin, but we wouldn't want to.
I wouldn't advise.
I don't think it would sell. But it doesn't really matter. The reason why the industry uses different skin is, different skin will have different compositions of this and that, and they achieve different objectives. We can take any cell and achieve those different objectives.
Well,
basically.
Yeah. We've used the platform to generate corneas with human cells. We've used the platform to generate meat with porcine cells. So it's already demonstrated that fundamentally this tissue can be generated from a variety of different cells. So we're kind of agnostic to that. If the customers want it definitely to be made from bovine or cow cells, or if they want it from a crocodile, that's also possible.
So from the point of view of commerciality in this, how does that sit with you guys? 3D biotissues. If you get one of these contracts, and obviously you've been talking to one of the houses for a long time, and I've seen that you've received payments for producing certain types of leather already for them. How commercially do you think that that's likely to work out? And at what volume would they require your leather?
We've created a new company, right? Lab Grown Leather Limited, that will single focus on this opportunity. Now, what the business model? There's multiple business models here. I don't think we're there yet. I keep saying we're not going to be making leather ourselves, but I cannot say that that's 100% the way it's going to pan out. It could be that we make leather ourselves. we've been thinking of a licensing model where we license the technology to someone that wants to make skin for a tannery, or it could be, the tannery that licenses the technology to make skin in-house. There's, there are all kinds of ways in which this can move forward, but it will be done from Lab-Grown Leather Limited, basically, that will have the rights to apply the technology from 3D BT in the specific field of making skin for leather applications.
And Shay, from a technological point of view, you ahead of the game. Is anybody else doing the same sort of stuff, or you think you got a motion or a forward or a step on?
We're way ahead of the game. Let Shay explain, but we're way ahead of the game.
Yes. You're way ahead of the game.
Way ahead of the game.
Yeah, we're way ahead.
Nobody else is doing this.
No one else is doing it in the same way or producing the same quality of leather this way. And we've had that confirmed to us by some of the fashion houses saying, feeling and testing the material. We tanned ourselves saying it's the best of this that they've ever seen. So it was great to hear, and that's something we believed. But of course, it's good to hear that from a customer. It all comes back to that our approach being fundamentally different from others in both the meat and the skin, and in that we're asking the cells to do all of the work, not just some of the work.
So that's what we call it scaffold-free. We're not in tissue engineering. The whole tissue engineering field is about scaffolds. You put a scaffold and the cells grow on scaffolds. We can grow a three-dimensional structure without scaffolds. But then there's something else that I think kind of like coming, it's coming from the meetings that we've just had, which is this whole concept of rationally designing the material so it actually fast tracks, the end result, basically a material that can be tanned by a process that is simpler and has less steps. Yeah. And we have the know-how now on how we can modify our skin to achieve that.
Yeah. So a super skin that's designed specifically for leather. So a skin that reduces the amount of downstream processing and harmful waste that's in the traditional leather forming side. But there's other aspects we could do to the skin to enhance it in different ways to make leather that's never been seen before, or to function in a way that's never been.
You could make it stronger, that it couldn't crease as much, maybe these type of things.
Yeah. And for the tannery, it's even simpler. They don't even need to think about, this is cruelty free or this and that. It's about, a more environmentally friendly process, so less chemicals that they need to deal with in the effluents and whatnot that can be achieved by simplifying the tanning process. And it's a huge environmental impact, from what we could deliver.
Yeah. But in the aeronautic automobile, they're about weight. So they want the quality of leather, but they want to reduce the weight. And traditionally, the only way to reduce the weight of leather is to make it thinner. And of course, it gets to a point where it no longer has the strength that it needs to function. But with this rationally designed approach, we create a skin that has a higher strength but lower weight.
And
so it's maybe thinner but stronger.
Yeah, with that, we've been approached not just by fashion houses in Paris, but high-end automobile companies that want to look at doing cultivated meat. Also, jewelry companies that are looking to produce leather that's cultivated or a lab-grown leather item. So, just with leather, there's a whole array of industries that you can feed into.
Yeah, and all these industries are incredibly high-margin businesses, and therefore, for aiming this type of product, this obviously is should be anyway, very profitable for you guys. So are we going to hear something about this? I mean, a year ago plus, we had a French company. They've obviously been doing some work on this. Are we going to hear about something that's happened that's going to be fundamental, that's going to go into this company in the next few months, guys?
Yeah, it's a challenge for us. The one you just mentioned, they're very adamant that they don't want to be mentioned because they want this work to be done in secrecy. That's the way they are, right? We're hoping that we can announce a collaboration with one of them, and we expect it's going to happen quite soon.
Good. And is it a case of, as a business, we want them all, or actually really we just want one? and that one has a competitive advantage over the others?
This material should be widely accessible, but it may be that there's different grades for different players, right? So, some people are trying to solve a particular problem or achieve a particular effect, and they may, the thinner material, stronger material for automotive will be a different skin to the one that you may be wanting to use in a bag. So we'll try to work with them all, but as we get into market, we may end up going down, semi-exclusivity or exclusivity for a period of time. Who knows? We'll have to cross those bridges when we get to them.
It'll be a nice problem to have, I think. Shay, just so we can think about the catalysts, the city mix is obviously potentially a big catalyst from what you said in terms of the numbers potentially. Where is that city mix going to be sold into if you manage to secure one of these deals?
Into a cultivated meat company.
Okay. Whereabouts? In the US and or somewhere else in the world?
Well, this particular company is, looking at Singapore, China, US, UK.
Okay, and they've already done trials to show that city mix is helping their growth of the meat?
Yeah. So they've shown that they get enhanced number of cells in the presence of the city mix, yes.
So really we've got, I don't want to simplify it too much, but we've got two big catalysts, one with the city mix and the potential for the revenue that could potentially come from that. And you also suggested there is another variety of city mix that you're also selling to the biotech industry itself.
Yeah, we're going to launch. Yeah, so it's important to highlight that one because we've talked too much about city mix, I think. I'm really excited about CytoBoost, which is not a new invention. It's a repositioning of city mix for the biopharma industry, and it's very attractive because, as you mentioned, you're talking about much smaller volumes at much higher pricing for very specific cell culture applications, but it's the same technology. So we leverage all that knowledge and expertise and capability to actually break into a market that exists already. It's out there, and that's going to be happening. We're launching that imminently, right, in the coming weeks.
Yeah, next month hopefully.
And then the final leg on that stool is the leather at the minute, and you're in a situation where obviously you're at negotiation stages. And let's hope that all comes up. I suppose this is the question everybody want to ask. What's wrong with the leather that we already have? What's wrong with the cow leather? What's wrong with whatever skin we get? Is it truly that there's imperfections in it? Is it more expensive to do it? Why? Okay, I accept the argument that we don't want the cruelty to animals. But at the end of the day, we're probably still killing the cow, probably eating the meat. So
there's a range
what is it?
There's a range of factors, so it's not just one. So there's obviously the carbon emissions of the husbandry industry, right? That's something that cannot grow on forever. So even if it stays the way it is, and if we want more leather, we'll have to figure out a different way of making leather just for, carbon footprint impact. Then there's the cruelty. But as you say, if we're eating the animal, we're killing it anyway. But some people don't want to eat animals for that reason. So for them, it's going to be relevant. But then, then there's the whole environmental impact of managing that skin, converting it into leather, the thing we just mentioned. So even if you don't change anything and you reduce the environmental impact of the tanning industry, that's another driver. And ultimately it may be cost, so you mentioned the cow. The cow is like 5 square meters of skin, but for luxury goods, you end up using like this much because everything else will have imperfections or blemishes or whatever. And here you can be rationally making a perfect square meter of skin and ultimately leather.
Yeah, that is obviously a big factor is that I presume, unless something goes wrong in some small incidences, that, you are creating the perfect piece of leather that can be used in any situation. For instance, the handbag or, the leather coat or whatever it happens to be. Whereas, the cow being natural, it is going to have imperfections. Even after being tanned, it will have imperfections. Yep. So do we want perfection? You think that's what the market is looking for?
Perfection.
Reproducibility.
Consistency.
Consistency is a big part. Yeah.
So if you think about the material, the raw material right now, it varies, So yeah, if you can have as your input into that factory a material that meets the same specification all the time, that is huge, right? That cuts costs right through it. And so I wouldn't call it perfection. It's, consistency. Material that meets the specification day in, day out, right? Basically. And you can use all of it. Waste, less waste. If you think about that 5 square meters of cow, if you're wasting half of it, it's just waste. And waste needs to be treated and ends up in the environment and whatnot.
Go on, Geoff, you were going to try and say something.
Well, no, I'm just going to say what Marcelo is saying is efficiency. That's really where you're getting. It's a question of making sure that you're actually producing something efficiently and cutting costs.
Yeah, because you're buying, as Marcelo says, you're buying the whole thing, maybe 5 meters, and you're only using a small amount of it. Whereas with this, you hopefully will be buying a smaller amount or making a smaller amount, being able to use it. And I suppose the real technological edge will be that you'll be able to design specifications of the leather for the item that you want to produce. So if it needs a bit of stretching in it, then it can have that. If it needs more strength in it, then it can have needs less weight, more weight. You can also do all of those things, which is amazing to think of. But yes, it is what we're aiming for. So we've been a year since we talked, or more than a year, actually, to be honest. So, Geoff, the last question I'm going to ask is, where will you be in a year from here?
Well, a lot further along and dealing with customers, good revenue and success, converting, our skin into a leather product in a number of industries. I'd like to see that definitely. So, yeah, I think people have to understand that revenue is not going to spring out immediately. It is obviously our medium and longer term goal. But we're in a new industry. We're in a lot of industries. We're focusing on development in a whole interesting parts of the world. And I think we just have to be a little patient and making sure that we can develop them in the most efficient and best way possible.
So, Marcelo, as a business development guy, do you see product made from your leather on the shelves within sort of a 12-month period or longer?
It's going to be longer because we need to now industrialize the protocol, and that's going to take some time. But I would say in a year's time, I want to be well on my way to industrializing the protocol to the initial scale, and I want to be in 3 to 5 announced, development programs with major names, basically. That's where leather is going to be in a year.
Well, guys, it all sounds very exciting, so I look forward to speaking to you all again and see how the progress has gone. Thanks for your time, guys, and I look forward to seeing, feeling, eating, well, I've already eaten these products that you're producing, and let's hope that they have a very positive effect on humanity.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's move on to our second guest this week. We're joined by Leon Coetzer, CEO of Jubilee Metals. Welcome back, Leon.
Hi, Phil. Thank you for the opportunity again.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, since you've last been on, we've seen a couple of news items, one regarding the 3-year renewable power purchase agreement, which we'll obviously come on to in a bit more detail later, and why it's very important right now. But most recently, the company has announced key management changes. Dr. Roel Coetzer, an esteemed business leader with notable roles, including chairman of Nedbank, Public Investment Corporation, Eskom and Discovery Bank, will join the Jubilee board in October 2024, pending regulatory approval. Dr. Coetzer is also a visiting professor at several universities in South Africa. Meanwhile, Neil Reynolds, Jubilee's chief financial officer, will resign after the publication of the company's annual results at the end of September 2024 to pursue a new opportunity. Rian Smit, current CFO of the Chrome and PGM division in South Africa, will serve as interim group CFO. Leon, you expressed gratitude for Neil's role in the company's transition to a decentralized leadership structure and welcomed Dr. Coetzer's extensive experience as Jubilee seeks to expand its African operations. Talk us through the rationale behind these board changes, please, Leon.
Oh, thanks, Phil. Yes, it's something that we've been implementing over the past couple of months. If you look at our company, we have 2 distinct business units. We have South Africa, that it's a fully matured business, organically growing, still growing actually quite fast. As you know, we are continuously building further modules. So that company, we took the decision that we're implementing a dedicated executive board that runs the day-to-day of that business. And that board includes the appointment of a very experienced CFO that runs that company equally. Across the border in Zambia, we have our copper business unit, which is in a different evolutionary space as it implements, and therefore it required its dedicated focus with a dedicated board. And it's management structures and a CFO. So the decentralized management structures is something that we've been rolling out. Neil and myself have been driving that through the group. First and foremost was the appointment of our managing directors, highly experienced individuals in each of these groups, followed by their respective CFOs. And with the completion of that, we've come to the implementation of that decentralized board. I mean, Neil has received a wonderful opportunity he seeks to pursue, and we absolutely wish him well in this new venture.
Absolutely, yeah. So just going back to that the previous news item, we obviously know that Zambia heavily relies on that hydroelectric power, which accounts for some 85% of the installed generation capacity. And obviously we've seen the fact that there's been a big drought there. There hasn't really been a rainy season, which has obviously greatly reduced the water levels in those reservoir dams, which has led to obviously a decrease in the electricity generation. So just talk us through this Lusemfoa hydropower company, where you're going to ensure continuous and competitively priced power supply obviously for Rowan and the Sable operations, and just how important it is to shore up that kind of energy supply.
Oh, Phil, absolutely. I think very few people outside of Zambia or operating in Zambia understands the fundamental importance of having a security of power in Zambia. The past period in Zambia has been extremely difficult and challenging in power. As you said, with the country relying so heavily on hydropower, facing a drought, power availability has been decreasing significantly in Zambia. It impacts all of operations, including Jubilee, especially at a time when we are commissioning and expanding a processing footprint. It is impossible to commit to delivery timelines and operational timelines in the absence of stable power, because it's not just about when the power is on. It's the knock-on effect you suffer in a refining process when your power is not stable. And therefore, it was a fundamental requirement that we are able to secure stable power. And that's why it was so important that we were able, under the new legislation within Zambia, secure our power directly from source. So even during drought, when they have limited capability of generating power, we have guaranteed power within their limited availability secured to us as Jubilee. That power supply agreement that has now become effective also includes entering into agreements with the government's ZESCO, because some of the power will be transmitted across their networks, and all of that administrative process has now come to a completion. It is a vitally important step.
And I believe there's also an additional, is it 10 megawatt of solar power as well at a discounted rate? Just talk us through the significance of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we looked at is that, of course, is the hydropower side, but then there's also Zambia is blessed during the winter season with great sunshine. And as part of this agreement, we have committed to jointly look at the installation, which has commenced already, for the solar power installation with the Lusemfoa Power Company. That means that in addition to our current power, there is solar power coming in. It's coming at a significant discount to current rates. And it also then critically ensures that we are telling the market that we are expanding operations. But in the absence of being able to tell the market where the power will come from, it is meaningless, such targets. And that's why it was so important that we also secure future power for our expansion.
So, Leon, the elephant in the room is all of these things are going on. And your production now in Zambia is on the move, if you like. It's starting to increase.
Yes.
The chrome is doing extremely well. The PGM's not so well, but still adding to the bottom line. And yet your share price is tanking, basically. So
yes.
Can you give us any understanding of what you think it has? I seem to understand that it is one of the main people in a sustainability fund that is actually offloading the shares, which is quite ironic considering how sustainable you are setting up the business. But can you give us any more information, or maybe you can't say too much?
Well, what I can say, Kevin, it's extremely frustrating when you have a company that has increased their chrome production by more than 20% year on year. The revenue in chrome, which we intentionally increased, offsets the drop in PGMs. As you say, it shows our flexibility of our business model. We have copper increasing. We have our processing capacity being capitalized. And now we're filling that capacity with our projects coming on stream at a time when the share price is going the opposite direction. Illogical of where the company is in its evolution. And then clearly one can only extrapolate that there is selling pressure from a particular fund that has to exit for whatever reasons. It's our duty then to educate the market, deliver on the results, deliver on our operations that will educate the buying opportunity that might offer others to come in and take up that selling pressure. And that's coming through the shares at the moment.
And for anyone who hasn't heard of Jubilee Metals before, just give us an overview of what Jubilee Metals over the last 3 to 5 years has become.
Oh, sure,
you're not the same animal you were 5 years ago, this is for sure.
No, absolutely not. I mean, what we are is, we just roll the clock back. We are 2 business units, one in Zambia, one in South Africa. South Africa is where we started. Zambia simply now seeks to replicate what we have created in South Africa. In South Africa, we are about to become the world's biggest producer of chrome concentrate. All of that on the back of rolling out modular processing units, processing chrome materials that the industry had overlooked or had thought was either waste or too low grade. The majority of what we produce in chrome concentrate, 1.5 million tons in the past year, set to exceed that by a significant margin in the current financial period as we continue to roll out further operating modules in chrome. On the back of our chrome unit, which is so large, so significant, the picture behind me is our PGM refining or processing unit. Once we remove the chrome, we then remove the PGMs, and that's why you're quite correct. PGM prices have dropped. But our PGMs is a byproduct of our chrome operations, and therefore we remain profitable even during these highly depressed markets within PGMs. It's that exact philosophy we've now taken to Zambia on copper, where first and primarily we've implemented and are implementing a large processing capacity through our refinery and our concentrators. It will equate to more than 25,000 tons of copper per annum just in that processing capacity. We are now launching the projects from the copper resources we have already secured, bringing those resources into operation and then filling that capacity. So you can see that once we fill that capacity, even though our business in South Africa is so large, copper is set to exceed that from a commercial financial standpoint in the very near term as those projects now come in. We have spent the capital. We are commissioning the capital we've invested, and that's what Jubilee is today. So we are set to very soon replicate the great success we've had in South Africa in chrome.
Yeah, I mean, at 25,000 tons, at I don't know, let's say 4,000 to 5,000 pound margin, you're going to be kicking off 100 to 125 million free cash flow, and your current market, obviously that's dollars, out with a market cap of 150 million. There's got to be some room there for expansion, and I don't think you see it stopping at 25,000 tons of copper.
Oh, absolutely not. 25,000 tons is our processing capacity we're now installing. That excludes the project we announced to the market, which is our last large waste rock project, 265 million tons of rock on surface already. That project is going through its final feasibility tests, and that would be in addition to what we deliver in the current processing capacity.
So we're stepping out there, and we're going to Zambia on the 28th, 29th, I think it is, of this month. So just a couple of weeks, less than a couple of weeks, 10 days. Just tell people what we're going to see at Rowan and the mine site that you talked about was going to see.
Well, first and foremost, Kevin, what you guys are going to see is the sheer magnitude of the investment that's gone into the processing capacity to process and refine copper. That's the first component. The second component that you'll see is how quickly the resources we have secured, how we operationalize those resources. You'll be visiting the Monkoi mine, which is only secured in June, and you're going there in September to already see how within that small space of time, that resource has operationalized. And it's the first of many that will now follow as we operationalize or bring to operation our resources to fill our processing capacity in Zambia. And that's what you'll be seeing is on the one side is the size, on the other side is the speed at which these operations can now be brought into operation.
Yeah, sadly, I think a lot of investors are thinking that mining stocks and things that people have to do physically, moving at the same warp speed as AI or, just computers in general. But when we physically have to do things, it takes time. And you have done this very quickly, absolutely. But it still takes months, weeks, years. That's why I gave you a 5-year time frame when we were talking about Jubilee. The imagination was probably there 5 years ago that this is what you wanted to achieve. But these things do take some time.
They do, Kevin. And what is a testament to management is during that time, the world continued to change, and you need to be able to adapt. And that's a testament to any good management, to show their ability that are they able to overcome those challenges and react. And that's something that Jubilee has really proven itself on. Is, you look at our South African business, where if you roll the clock back 2 years, PGM byproduct was the majority of our earnings out of South Africa. We saw the PGM market pulling back and we reacted. Today, our chrome has surpassed that. Chrome is able to buffer that drop in PGMs because of the growth we prioritized into chrome. In Zambia Classic, we faced the reality of no power, a crumbling infrastructure for our projects, and we had to react. We are one of the first companies to secure full private supply of power. We are building our own bridges and our own roads to our projects to overcome these challenges, and that's so critical in the industry that we are in.
Yeah, and I mean, I see Jubilee now an incredible call option to the price of copper, and also in effect precious metals with the PGMs, and obviously you have the backstop there, even though it's not really a backstop, but of chrome. So you really are in a way. I mean, if PGMs went well, how quickly could you adjust to take advantage of that PGM uptick?
We are perfectly poised, Kevin. If PGMs, and already you saw palladium starting to slightly tick up, PGMs respond, we react immediately to that. We have an exceptional leadership team within our, we spoke earlier about our boards and our managing directors. We've created the sense of ownership of the business through our managing directors. So they are invested into the success of those companies, and they react, whether it is a Sunday or Wednesday, to those operations, and that is how we run our operations so successfully.
And I suppose my final question would be, Dr. Coetzer's appointment. How is this going to help Jubilee?
Well, what we wanted to ensure is on two components, is that we continue the changes that our new chairman, or not new so new anymore, through Ollie had brought into the company, where we have governance structures rolling into the company. And as you can see in his repertoire, Coetzer is a established, recognized leader within operationalizing governance into companies. It is what he lectures on at various universities, and that's why he holds chairmanships of such prestigious companies. He also brings a critical African focus to our board, since if you look at our business, we are an African-focused entity through South Africa and Zambia, and therefore that component of leadership and understanding is vital to how we react to the challenges and face them in our jurisdictions that we operate.
Good. So you anticipate that he will have a positive impact in terms of making things not necessarily easier, but more smoother from a governance and compliance point of view?
Well, what it is, well, with who he is, he could pick any company. And what he saw in us was the groundwork that already had been laid for our governance and our governance structures. Equally, he saw the tremendous opportunity we face as a company, how we can grow to multiples of our current size. And that excited him. He felt that he had that experience to bring. How does he help a board guide us through that potential and ensure we capture that potential? We are just demonstrating what we can achieve in Zambia in copper. 3 years ago, we were demonstrating what we can achieve in chrome, and we soon to be the biggest in the world in what we do in chrome. And that's what he saw, is that we're simply demonstrating to the copper industry what we can do in copper. And he wants to be part and help guide us to that success.
Very good. So over the next few months, what can we expect from you now?
It's now very much focusing on two components. One, in Zambia, of course, over the coming months, is the constant update on how are we operationalizing or bringing into production our copper resources to take up this processing capacity we have now commissioned in Zambia. So it's a constant update to how is Monkoi, Project G, the waste rock projects, all of these projects coming into operation to take up that copper capacity. In South Africa, it's about the completion, as we told the market, of the next 2 modules that are being constructed and brought into operation on chrome to go even larger. We'll be bringing onto our website the videos of these operations for shareholders and investors to appreciate the sheer size of what's being installed in South Africa. And then you reflect on our market cap.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, Leon. Always a pleasure, and we would look forward to welcoming you again in the near future updates. We'll say Leon Coetzer, CEO of Jubilee Metals. Thanks very much for your time.
Oh, thanks, Phil. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Leon.
Okay, so let's move on to our third guest this week. We're joined by Oliver Friesen, CEO of Guardian Metal Resources. Welcome back, Oliver. So 2 roasts in a row. How's things?
Yeah, things are going well. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Yeah, busy as ever. But so we just saw the company recently report significant drill results from its first drill hole, PM24001, at the Desert Scheelite deposit within its Pilot Mountain project in Nevada. The hole intersected 3 strongly mineralized tungsten zones alongside zinc, silver, and copper, totaling 38.7 meters. Notable intersections include 9 meters at 0.37% tungsten trioxide and 27.9 meters at 0.42%, with standout very high-grade results of 1.37% and 1.44%. The interval remains open at depth, and drilling has progressed to the 21st hole. These results position Pilot Mountain as a valuable strategic asset for US national security, particularly as the US lacks domestic tungsten production. Further assay results are expected in the coming weeks. So do you feel like you're home and dry now, Oliver, or certainly on the way to proving up a very large-scale tungsten deposit?
Well, the great thing is we already have one. When we acquired this property, and the reason that we were so attracted to it was the fact that it hosts what's believed to be the largest tungsten deposit in the U.S. And that was 4 years ago when we acquired that. And at the time, no one cared about tungsten. And look at us now, fast forward 4 years, and tungsten is becoming one of the most critical defense metals that exists. And there's pretty rampant speculation that export bans out of China could be coming here. So if we had just sat on our hands for the last 4 years, we'd still be thrilled because we position ourselves for what's looking to be a fantastic and really important move into critical metals and defense metals. So everything we do from there is just gravy on top. So when it came to the drill hole we just announced, that's one of the best drill holes that's ever been drilled at the property. We have over, I think, let me just confirm the total amount of meters, but yeah, almost 40 meters of high-grade tungsten mineralization with really significant, copper, silver, and zinc credits. So really, really great start. 20 holes still to report, and drilling is ongoing. So there's still ore coming out of the ground, being processed, sent to the lab. So, we're talking about probably at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 months of news flow related to drilling alone that's going to be coming here.
So from the point of view, Oliver, of this drill program, how many of the holes that you've drilled now are into this desert scheelite?
Yeah, so we released a map with the RNS, we released a plan map which shows kind of where the various holes are. People have picked up on the fact that a lot of the holes have been drilled into desert scheelite. And that's for good reason. That is where the largest undeveloped deposit in the U.S. currently sits within that kind of, in the grand scheme of the property, what looks to be kind of a relatively small little area. I think the reason I highlight that is because it just shows the scale of what we've kind of explored and uncovered since then. But yeah, we've been really focused on desert scheelite. We're waiting on some permit updates on some of the other targets that we really like, some exploration targets. But the reality is, there is a huge need for domestic tungsten projects. And as a reminder, when it comes to U.S. tungsten, we own the largest undeveloped deposit, and we are the only publicly traded tungsten-focused company. So with where the puck is going, so to say, there's a huge need to get tungsten resources ready for not exploration, but actual development and mining as quickly as possible. Because the reality is, and just for instance, if China were to ban the exports of tungsten to the US, there's a need for tungsten today, not 6-7 years from now. So as you can see there, based on where we're targeting, what we're trying to do there, alongside the exploration, which is a really important part of what we're doing, is getting the necessary holes completed into desert scheelite, which will support the PFS being an important piece of the puzzle before this can actually go into commercial production. So that's just to give a bit more color as to why there's such a focal point on the desert scheelite. But as a reminder, we are waiting for permits on some of the other areas, and those areas will also be tested further as part of this program.
Do you anticipate that by doing this program, the original 12,500 tons, I think it was, of tungsten is going to be increased?
Well, that's the intention. Yeah, of course. What we're doing is along with upgrade drill holes, which is when I say upgrade, I mean converting the resource from inferred to indicated, because indicated resources are required for PFS. So that's obviously an important part of what we're doing, but we're also stepping out, right? This deposit is open, wide open down dip and along strike towards the east and towards the west. So we need to go and drill those targets to see how far these zones extend. So the current drilling we're doing now is a combination of the upgrade, as I mentioned, and then step out. So that's what we're doing. We're looking to grow this thing. We're looking to find higher grade zones that we can mine maybe earlier on in the process. But yeah, it's really a 2-3-fold effort here, and there's multiple things that we're doing with the ultimate goal of being in position to supply the U.S. market with tungsten, probably the most or one of the most important defense metals, as quickly as possible, which is a hugely important undertaking and one that the U.S. needs us to be successful on.
So by the extension of desert scheelite without the other things, how much or how important is desert scheelite in size? Okay, let's hope we find tungsten in the other places. That looks quite likely that we will. But in size and ability to cover the demand that is required in the US, how would desert scheelite stack up?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think just a few kind of important data points on that. So number one, China currently produces 86% of total global supply. And the other big kind of producers of tungsten in the world is Russia. North Korea is up there. So when you look at the top kind of 5 on the list, Vietnam is up there as well. There's just the important point to note is that there's very, very little production from the Western world. So what that means is that in the event of an export ban, if that were to happen, the Western world supply right now, which is already very thin, has to be spread across lots of different consumers. So what we're looking to do here is be part of the Western world solution. Now, there was Thor Mining, the previous owner of this project back in 2017, 2018, at a time when truthfully, no one really cared about tungsten. And obviously that's changed completely since then. They were looking to supply what would amount to about 10% of total U.S. annual needs. However, obviously, in an expanded production scenario, there's scope to certainly produce more. Now, just as a quick note, there's about 35,000 tons of contained tungsten, and the work that was done supported about 1,000 tons per year of production. So a very appreciable and material amount of the United States annual needs could come from Pilot Mountain in that base case scenario. Now we need to do the relevant studies and continue to advance what we're doing. But based on the amount of contained tungsten of 35,000 contained tons, without if we didn't find another ounce of tungsten, we could obviously support an expanded scenario. Now, just as a quick caveat or a quick kind of data point to compare, is a company called Perpetua Resources, which is, I encourage everyone to have a look at that company. So they're an antimony exploration development company in the state of Idaho, so just north of Nevada. And the reason antimony is so important is because it and tungsten are important and crucial elements in the manufacturing of ammunitions. And Perpetua has received multiple DoD DPA-3 grants, but they're projecting that they'll be able to produce from their one property, their one deposit, 20% of the annual U.S. needs for antimony. So that just to put into perspective what they're doing and how much they can supply of antimony. Obviously, we need to do more work, and the drilling we're doing and the PFS we're doing will help us determine exactly how much we can produce. But that's hopefully some data points that I think should really shine some light on how significant this property is and how important we can be when it comes to the national security objectives that are currently at
As we progress this drilling, what is your hope? Do you think it's possible that you increase this by 100%, or is it likely that it would be significantly less than that?
I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, we're doing the drilling to figure out what the answer to that is. A data point I can kind of lead you to or point you to is an exploration report that was done back, I believe, in 2018, 2017. So it was looking at the exploration upside of Pilot Mountain. And they came up with sort of a base case scenario of 2x the current defined resource of 12.5 million tons. So that would get it to about 25 million tons of contained material. And then an optimistic scenario is about 3x. So that would put you at about 37 million tons of material. So that was the report they produced. That was looking at kind of all the different tier 1, tier 2 exploration targets across the property. We're not going to be drilling all of those as part of this program. But I think it just highlights that there is a lot more to be discovered here, and we're starting to work towards figuring out exactly what the final tally is going to look like.
When I saw the drill results, I was a bit surprised to see tungsten readings of 1.44, I think it was, 1.37. I don't remember exact numbers, but that type of scenario as a percentage, because I thought that was extremely high. I mean, am I right, or is that normal?
No, absolutely. You're correct. So we highlighted there that some of the assays we got, which were sort of in the 1.4% WO3 range, those are some of the highest assays ever seen across the property. And that's in a new zone that was actually quite a distance away from a previous zone that identified some very high grades. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, 1.4% WO3 is very significant assay, and it wasn't, a really narrow, thin section. I think it was certainly over a meter, maybe a meter and a half, and we had a few of those. So there's certainly a sub zone of higher grade material, and we're going to try to delineate that and see exactly what that looks like as we drill more.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question on that regarding the WO3 and the different sort of forms that tungsten comes. Are some better than others in terms of the trioxides and things like that, Oliver, from a geologist point of view?
So tungsten is found in different minerals. So wolframite is a mineral where you find tungsten. Scheelite is the main mineral found at Desert Scheelite and at Pilot Mountain. And scheelite is by far and away the premium tungsten product. So what we will produce, or what we would produce in a production scenario, is a scheelite dominated concentrate. And that's ultimately the material that most off-takers want to see. There's a lot of projects around the world that will produce an appreciable amount of wolframite and a few other tungsten-bearing minerals, but scheelite is the premium product, and that's what the vast majority of our property hosts when it comes to the tungsten is scheelite.
So tell us a little bit, Oliver. Just obviously, drilling program's going to go on. The results are going to start coming out on a regular basis now. I would imagine either every week or every other week as you manage to do that. And good luck with all the RNSs, because it looks quite complicated, I have to say. So secondly, Garfield, where are we with the cat on the block?
Yeah, so we put out, I think we discussed this one, we put out a news release earlier in the month. We found a new zone there called the Friesen zone. So that was an area that we increased the staking boundary to. We spent a bit of time there collecting some samples. And visually, obviously, those were encouraging samples, but when we got the results back, it was surely, it exceeded our expectations. What we saw there was 7 of the 8 samples returning greater than 1.75% copper equivalent. And we had individual samples up to about 16% copper equivalent. That includes copper, silver, and gold. So that's another zone. So Friesen is now one of 4 zones on Garfield. And obviously, we're looking forward to the next steps on that property.
So there ain't no tungsten on Garfield?
No, we have not found any. What we're looking at there is really just porphyry mineralization and porphyry deposits, whereas at Pilot Mountain, it's skarn deposits, which is where you'll typically find your elevated tungsten grades.
And as the crow flies, how far apart is Garfield from Pilot Mountain?
Yeah, it's about 25 miles away towards the northwest. So actually, the guys who are stationed in Hawthorne right now, who are managing the program, they drive effectively past Garfield every day to get to Pilot Mountain. So they're very close. And the great thing about Garfield is it's really close to the highway and quite close to town. So that means, if we wanted to drill in the winter or explore in the winter, it's a really accessible property, which is fantastic.
Very good. Now, today we've just seen gold hit an all-time high. Well, for 2,600, and you want to use $16, $17, $18 per ounce. What possibilities have we got happening in Guardian Metals that could take advantage of this?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's gold we're obviously watching with great interest. We announced in the RNS that we're going to be doing some fire assays, selective fire assays over some of the desert scheelite core. There were some historical reports that mentioned gold and some gold grades there, so we want to go test that for ourselves. So fire assay is a technique that will tell us how much gold is in the rock. So we'll see what comes of that. Considering how polymetallic desert scheelite is, you never know what you're going to find. So we obviously know there's tungsten, copper, silver, zinc. We found some lead in there, some molybdenum. So there's we're looking at the potential for gold. But I think more importantly, and the reason that, Guardian used to be golden metal resources is we have a great Carlin type gold property in northern Nevada, really, really high grade historical gold results from surface there. So it's one that is permitted for trenching and for drilling. We, I think about that asset quite often. And obviously, we really do have our hands full with Garfield and Pilot Mountain. But we've built our team up as well. In Nevada, we have a large team of geologists and engineers now that work exclusively for us. So, there is the scope that we could move them around and bounce them around as long as, the things at Pilot Mountain were under control, which they certainly are. So we're watching it closely. We feel very fortunate to have a great gold asset at a time when gold continues to hit all-time highs. So, our investors get exposure to gold as well, which is a great commodity.
Okay, just one last question then. On some of the Telegram groups this week, I saw some stuff from the Department of Defense clearly stating Pilot Mountain wasn't as a guaranteed grant, but it also stated the quantum of that grant. I'm not sure you can say anything, but you got anything to say?
Yeah, I'm gonna reserve comment there. That was a published document that wasn't leaked from what I can tell. It's a regularly published document, but yeah, there's certainly some indications that monies are coming for tungsten development and exploration. So we'll kind of leave it at that. And obviously, we've talked about our desire and our ambitions to obtain non-dilutive grant funding. So yeah, certainly something we're looking at and pushing forward. So we'll kind of leave it at that. But just if I can, gents, before we take off, there's been obviously a pullback in the share price, and there's been lots of comments and questions about kind of what's going on there. At the end of the day, my job as a CEO, we've had a great run at GMET. We've done really well over the last kind of year and a half since we've listed, certainly in the face of what's been a challenging market. And I think, pullbacks are natural, and I think they're healthy for a stock. But at the end of the day, my job as a CEO is to not get too bogged down with the kind of the day-to-day fluctuations in the share price. At the end of the day, if I can look at myself and say, hey, I added value to GMET with what I did today, then over the long term, it all kind of sorts itself out. And, I posted a tweet today, which I think is quite timely. What we looked at is just what's happened in the last 3 weeks, literally just the 3 weeks. And I put a full list through there, and I'll just highlight a few of them now. So the free zone that we mentioned, that returned up to 16% copper equivalent. The Porphyry West mag anomaly looks to be much, much bigger than Porphyry South, and that's a new development with the inversions we did. The North target at Pilot Mountain, that's a new discovery. We got the geochron results, shows 2 key mineralizing events at Pilot Mountain. We obviously put out the drill hole that we discussed today, 38.7 meters of high-grade tungsten. There's significant byproduct metals throughout that drill hole. There's further speculation ramping up that tungsten export bans could come out of China sometime this year, which would obviously be very material for us. Gold prices hit an all-time high. That's obviously very material and important for Golconda. Silver, copper prices surge. That's important for Pilot Mountain and Garfield. GBP hit 2-year highs versus the USD, so our in-country costs have gone down about 10%. And that's literally within less than 3 weeks. So at the end of the day, obviously share prices will move up, they'll move down. People have reasons for selling. But, my job and the reason that, I'm here in this role is to make sure that at the end of the day, I can look at myself and say, I added value to this business. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. And so that's that. I'll kind of leave it at that. But, lots to look forward to coming over the next couple of weeks and months here.
Yeah, I think on that note, it's a good time to wrap up and say, Oliver Friesen, CEO of Guardian Metal Resources, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, I appreciate it, gents.
Okay, so let's have a look at some of the movers and shakers of the week. We saw Uru Metals up some 58% on the week. Blackbird PLC also had a good week, up 20%. Don't know if you saw the news.
Pedro will be happy about Blackbird.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you saw the news, a bit of a shocker this week that HARL and Wolff, the Titanic shipbuilder, obviously known for the very famous Titanic, set to enter administration for the second time in 5 years, with 56 to 60 immediate job losses, mainly in London. However, Global Energy Group, based in the Highlands, has expressed interest in taking over Harland and Wolff's Arnish yard in Lewis, one of the largest employers on the island, with about 150 workers. Arnish recently secured a contract for subsea structures in the oil and gas industry, and the GMB union is urging the government to protect the shipyards, critical for sectors like renewables and defence. Potential buyers also include Babcock International, and Spanish shipbuilder Navantia are also weighing bids for Harland and Wolff's yard in Belfast. Arnish, Methil and Appledore. Harland and Wolff, which employs over 1,500 people, continues discussions with investors as it seeks interim funding to avoid collapse. Would be an absolute shocker to see that name go, wouldn't it?
It would. It's very sad. But, You know, seems to be, I don't know the full story that well, but the government really didn't back them with any sort of a loan guarantee, and that really sort of pushed them out into the
They asked for
into the
200
ocean.
million, didn't they, as a loan from like a bridging loan from the government, and it was inevitably was going to be turned down in this current climate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They don't seem to support many, do they? I mean, there's talk of now of them closing this. You know, they were talking about bringing back this Lincolnshire coal mine. There's talk of that being plans being scrapped for that. So, and then also with the Labour on the North Sea stuff, they don't seem to be very supportive of British industry, do they?
No, and for sure it's good anyway. Let's keep the environment good in our own backyard, and we'll import it all instead. Pay more money, and we'll have the problems somewhere else. But the problem will still come here. You know, I think this whole green scenario is, if we're not all going green, then it doesn't work. It's the whole thing, even with the electric vehicles scenario. I can see now that electric vehicle take-up will be very patchy around the world. So in certain places, it's going to work. In other places, it's not going to work. It's not possible. The infrastructure is just not there, you know? So yeah, we envisaged a world of electric vehicles across the board. I don't see it, but let's see.
Okay, so what else did we see? We saw news from Power Metals this week. They gave an update on the intended formation of a uranium-focused joint venture involving Power Metals' entire portfolio of uranium licenses. Obviously, further to the company's announcement on the 27th of August, the parties are pleased to confirm that all required work streams with respect to the legal due diligence are now complete, and the preparation of the definitive legal transaction documents for the transaction are now in substantially final form. However, certain administrative tasks relating to the finalisation of the finance arrangements by the investor remain outstanding. So a bit of a plea for time, I guess, on that one, but it all looks like it's on track, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it's on course. I had a quick message exchange with Sean to see if he wants to come and talk about the Saudi deals that they've struck. They said, no, I'm focusing on this and I've got to get this over the line. So I'm pretty sure he's head down and get the uranium thing sorted out, which I think will be a real fillet to the Power Metals. And almost value-wise, it could be similar to what we spoke to with Oliver. It could really be a game changer in terms of the amount of value it could add parties. So yeah, we don't really know how to quantify it, but you know, there's some seriously good assets in those uranium assets.
Okay. And then there was a good update from Sovereign Metals on the Wednesday, on the 18th, so basically saying that the spiral plant had successfully been installed for the graphite offtake discussions. So that was good to see. Lots of things moving on there. Obviously, the installed and commissioned identical models were selected for the wet concentrator plant per the simple 2023 CASIA PFS, which process flow sheet. So good to see news from them.
Yeah, absolutely. We nearly got to Malawi, but having spoken to Sapam, it's not going to work. But next week, we're actually going to be in Zambia. And as you listened today, that we're going to go and see some things in Zambia, the updated Rowan plant, one of their mines. So that should be interesting. So we're watching this.
We'll probably bring the roast to you from Zambia or somewhere on the road on the journey over there or whatever from over there when we visit, as you say. We'll go and see Jubilee's assets, and there's the new project Moncoya, isn't it, which effectively will feed the Sable refinery.
That's right. So we're going to be staying close to the Sable refinery, I think, and then going up to close to Andola, which is where Rowan is, and then flying back to Sutton. So yeah, very interesting. Obviously, there's a few other things. We might be meeting a few other people from other companies as well. As you know, Extract, Galileo, African Pioneer are all drilling at the minute. So yeah, interesting times.
Anything else? I mean, I've got obviously just have a quick look at the sort of wider market in terms of, we've obviously talked about gold hitting all-time high. We've also seen news of basically the Bank of England's decision to hold the interest rates at 5%, which was obviously widely expected following rising services inflation in August. It was an 8-1 vote for holding rates and was more decisive than anticipated. And for a rate cut in November, 4 members of the Monetary Policy Committee would need to change their stance. And obviously we saw over in the US, the US rates, interest rates were cut for the first time since 2020. And obviously global stock markets rallying after that. So it was a real vote of confidence. The FTSE 100 index rose by 75.0 points to 8,328. And the biggest riser were Rolls-Royce up 29 pence to 525, and Antofagasta, the miner, up 80.5 to 1858. And then also, you mentioned earlier on, the pound rose 0.75 cents against the dollar to 1.3278, and by 0.42 cents against the euro to 1.19116. So a good week for the pound, I guess.
Yeah, good week for the pound. The dollar decided, the Fed decided 0.5% interest rate cut. Markets liked it. It looks like the Fed are going to go on an aggressive cutting scenario over the next 18 months or so, back to 2.75 to 3%, I think is what they were stating, which will mean at least, 6, 7, 8 cuts of interest rates. Likelihood is the UK will follow, but I think behind, so because of that, I can see that the British pound is going to gain value against the dollar. And yeah, let's see. We've got a crazy election coming in November. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the reports I'm reading is from a market point of view. Neither are particularly positive and neither are particularly negative. It's going to be more on social issues and things like that I think it's going to have a big impact. And wars, I think ultimately it seems like Trump wants to end them all, and Kamala is probably going to carry on with them. So, but I think the Americans are starting to get a bit sick of spending all their money on the rest of the world, fighting in different places, which I think is really a first. I think they're starting to realize this isn't really a very sensible way to do things. So
It was interesting. I saw an article by the Yale historian Timothy Snyder recently, and he said that after the first assassination attempt on Trump, that the US billionaire oligarchs were in favor of a weaker state for a reason. A dysfunctional US will be less able to collect their taxes, Snyder adds. The new oligarchs are not elected, but they have money and power, and they want and expect more at the cost of everyone else. I think that you can't argue with that, really, can you?
Yeah.
Okay, so anything...
It corrupts power.
Anything else to mention? Any sporting events we want to mention?
Well, I'm sort of stuck in a bit of a forest, so I don't really know what to say. Yeah, after Liverpool's loss against Nottingham Forest. Yeah, and obviously the end of our season as far as Manchester United supporters are concerned, because we lost the game. But yeah, it wasn't good. But it was good to see us go to the San Siro and beat Milan 3-1. Yeah, and the other clubs struggled, didn't they, really? I think Manchester City drew 0-0 at home, which was a bit of a surprise. Yeah, and Atalanta against Arsenal was 0-0. It was in Italy, obviously. So yeah, so really, Aston Villa and Liverpool led the way in the Champions League with wins in their first games. But obviously, a long way to go with this new format. 8 games, I think it is, in the first phase, isn't it? And then the top 8 go through directly. Then it's 9 to 17, is it, or 16? Then play off against each other. Or is it 9? No, it's 9 to 24 play against each other. And then the bottom 8 rejected immediately. So they're out and they don't even go into the Europa League. So, yeah, interesting times. Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening once again. And obviously, it's been a very long show this week. We've had three guests on, just like last week. And if you like what you heard, please do subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you get any further notifications of any future episodes.
Thanks for listening.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.